everyone. Welcome to the first podcast for My Quilty Neighborhood. And here we're going to talk about all things quilting. And this is my friend Dawn.
Yep.
Say hi, Dawn.
Hi, Dawn.
And I'll say hi, Jen.
What if I say hi, Jen? And you can say
hi, Dawn. Hi.
Hi.
I think we've got that covered. So let's talk about how long we've known each other.
I don't think it's been very long. Maybe
No, it
about
hasn't.
4 years.
Yeah, I was going to say, we met at Always in Stitches.
Mm-hmm.
It's a local quilt shop that we both love. And I'm trying to think about our first meeting. I'm not sure.
Oh my goodness, our first meeting. Well, I don't know if it was our first meeting or not, but it was pretty memorable. We did this thing at Always in Stitches. We were both employees at the time. And where you bring in this projects you're working on. And it's called a PIP. Projects in Progress.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So Jennifer decides that, and I'm new. I know nothing. I know nobody. I know nothing. I know nothing. Okay? Everybody's bringing in all these projects they'd made, quilts, pillows, purses, all kinds. And Jennifer pulls out a pattern. And I thought to myself,
What the hell?
what in the heck is she doing? Anybody can go out on the floor and pull up a pattern.
I said, this is what I'm working on. And I held up a pattern because that's all I had to show that week.
And I said, well, where's the rest? She didn't know me from Adam, you see? So she gave me this really weird look, like, who are you and what's up with you? Yes, you did. You don't know it, but you did.
I did. The look was, I didn't know what she was talking about.
Exactly.
Because I don't know what she
Because I had
said, where's the rest? But you said something like that. And I was like, well, the rest of the pattern? That's immediate. I am a very literal person.
Yeah.
So when she said, where's the rest? I thought, the rest of the pattern? Because I think what I did was I just printed out the cover to bring that. I didn't print the whole pattern because I was still working on it.
Yeah.
So I'm frugal, so I didn't want to waste the paper because the instructions weren't finished. So I think I was trying to figure out, how did she know that I don't have the instructions in here yet or whatever?
I read her face.
I didn't know what she was talking about.
The way I read it was, who are you and what in the world are you? I mean, what are you to say? And I had no idea she had written the pattern. I didn't know she was a pattern writer, a publisher of books. I didn't know anything about her, all the wonderful quilts that she had designed or anything like that. I was just expecting her to bring a project, and here she brings a piece of paper that anybody could have gotten off the counter. And I was so disappointed. And so that was our first meeting.
Yeah. And I can't remember how that, I think later in the meeting, I said something about, whatever, designing the blah, blah, blah. And you're like, oh, did you make that pattern? And the way she said that,
yeah,
her face was, how, you can't do that. Like, I haven't even known you for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But I can tell you're not smart enough to have designed a pattern.
No! See how we read things different? You should never read people's faces.
We're both very sensitive too,
yeah.
So it's absolutely not.
So that's how it started out. And now that we're friends, I'm amazed because we got through that. So,
well, we both say what we're thinking.
Yes, we do.
So,
yes, we do. So we both know where we stand with each other because we don't read each other's faces anymore.
But now I love you.
Yeah, I love you too.
Even though I'm too dumb to design a pattern.
All these patterns she's written.
Yeah, written.
So now she can bring patterns anytime she wants.
Yes,
I will look at them totally different.
So anyway, now that we've introduced ourselves
and made crazy
and told you way more than
you ever wanted to know.
Oh God, now I'm crying. She makes me cry.
I'm sorry.
You make me laugh and cry so much. So this is the first one.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure how this is all going to go, but I've got some plans on things that we're going to talk about. And both of us have, I don't even know, we should not combine our years of experience because that would be a number way high. It would pop your ears.
Yeah.
But we've been doing this for, let's say, decades and decades.
Right.
Quilting. And
it's our life.
It's literally our
Yeah,
life. Yeah. And, well, yeah, because let's talk a little bit. Everybody at home, I believe, knows me. I'm the inquiring quilter, and I design patterns.
Exactly.
And I'm also a former Island Boutique ambassador and now an Island Boutique designer. So I've got collections, fabric collections. And,
So next time she's just going to bring a piece of fabric and hold it up and say, "Oh, this is what I did."
Yes.
And I'll be saying,
She'll go, "What?" Oh my God. I'm going to need to find the Kleenex. And let's see. And then and I've written some books too. So there.
It
There
is
you go.
amazing that we're friends because you love bright colors, the batiks, the tropical
The
vibe.
tulip pinks, the cake facet.
Yeah, and I'm like Civil War all the way.
You're totally the
I
opposite.
piece tiny little pieces, and the duller the better. So I mean, we're opposite. I guess they say opposites attract. So yeah, that's who I am. I sample sew for a fabric manufacturer, and
you can't share who it is.
Oh, I can tell you. Yeah, it's Moda. I just didn't know if you wanted me to say that or
Go
not.
ahead. Yeah, she's the Moda gal.
I sample sew for Moda, and
do you tech edit their patterns as well when you sample sew?
Well, yeah, when I sample sew, yeah, sometimes, and I sew all the time. If I'm not sample sewing for Moda, I'm sample sewing for maybe a designer or getting ready for a demo or something.
Yeah.
And I love to teach.
She's a good teacher.
And I don't have time right now, but I want to get back into teaching. And but since I found YouTube, I just love to do YouTube videos.
She does.
I do.
So way back when I had this idea of doing a podcast, I asked Dawn if she would like to join me. And this was, at least a year ago?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's taken me to this point to get...
We've been simmering the pot.
It has. It's been simmering up here.
Uh-huh.
And also to get room in my schedule to be able to do this. So hopefully we will be bringing you episodes every 2 weeks. And then maybe more frequently, but it's just right now we'll just see when we can meet. Yeah, I'm thinking every 2 weeks is as much as Dawn will be able to spare.
Yeah.
But I want her like every day.
Oh yeah, I'll just live. I'll just move in.
I know. We've got this room.
Yeah, we've got this room.
Granted, it's a studio, so when I'm taping, I'll have to step over you.
Yeah, exactly.
But we do have a place for you to be, as long as you don't mind the floor. And
I do mind the floor. So,
what
are we going to talk about today?
Well, today in our first episode, I thought we would talk about pressing matters.
Okay.
Because it really does. One of the things I found out in my decades of quilting is that when your blocks don't fit, when your quilt is not when it's coming out a little wonkadoo, one of the major reasons for that, there's probably two reasons you could boil it down to, and that would be pressing and cutting. Pressing accurately and the right way, and cutting accurately and the right way, and then
finding your quarter inch,
and then quarter inch. You're right.
Yeah.
Quarter inch.
So 3 things.
So three
for
things.
successful quilting.
That's really 3 things.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're right. Of course, the quarter inch.
Finding
is
your
a
quarter
must.
inch is a must.
Yeah, and I guess that's about it. So today's episode is going to be about pressing. So I don't know where you want to start. Should we talk with what pressing is?
Yeah. The other day, I love these videos on how they make things and how they do things. Like how do they make Twinkies and get the 3 holes in the bottom and all of it. I watch those videos all the time. Well, there came up on a video about old-time printing newspapers.
Yes.
And they had this humongous machine, and they put all these little letters in it, and then they would bring down this press, and they would just, this huge metal pressing thing, and they would take this bar, and then they would just press. So pressing, they're not doing this in the pressing, when they press, they press.
Yeah. Pressing is this.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a difference between ironing and pressing. You iron clothes, you press quilt blocks.
Yeah, press quilts.
Do you agree?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So, we'll get into tools a little bit later because the next obvious question would be, what iron do you use and what tools can help you press? But let's talk about just the technique for pressing.
Okay.
Let's say I've just sewn a seam.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully it's a 1/4 inch if you're doing quilting.
Hopefully it's a 1/4 inch.
Yep.
and I'm going to press it.
Okay.
So what should I be doing, Dawn?
Well, are you going to press towards one fabric or are you going to press the seam open? That would always be my question. Sometimes, if you're...
That's a good question.
Yeah.
We should probably discuss
the difference.
the difference, the pros and the cons, and when you should choose to do what.
Okay, so what are you? Are you a press to one side or are you an open presser?
I am a new convert to pressing open because of this gal. I used to press everything to the side. One of the reasons that I loved it is because it would, when you press one part of a block this way, the seam that way, and you press the other block that way, you put those two parts together and they butt up. And not only do they butt up and nest.
Did you just say butt on YouTube?
I just realized
that.
So I'll say nest.
Oh my goodness! Please don't cancel us YouTube for saying butt on TV.
We didn't say that. We just now said it like.
I know.
Beep, beep, beep. Those little bubbles right in front of your mouth.
Yeah. The circle with the slash.
With the slash.
Okay, let's not say B-U-T-T anymore. Let's say nest.
But they do. And they nest together.
Yeah.
And that helps your seams, your block come together very accurately and improves your sewing. Also, your machine is helping with that because the feed dogs will bring those two nested seams together as you're sewing. So that's a benefit of doing the pressing to one side. The negatives, however, they kind of add up. One, I'm sure you've experienced already. You may have a pattern that will show you which way to press, and that pattern designer has already thought out all the different ways in which a block is going to come together, and is trying to help you create nested seams by pressing in opposite directions for most of the seam intersections.
Throughout the whole quilt.
Throughout a whole quilt. But if you talk about like one block, like back here, this is really the same block, it's just different colors. If I have you press this way and then that way, whatever, you'll get the block to come together nicely. But the seams at the edge will be the same as the seams at the edge of the other block. So when you're sewing those two blocks together, they're not opposite directions. They're pressed to the same side. So you're kind of struggling a little bit to get those intersections from block to block to match up. And then you have rows of blocks, and so you've got the same problem there.
Exactly.
So that's definitely a negative.
Right.
And I know you know another negative.
The bulk.
Can we say bulk?
Bulk. I think we can say bulk.
Bulk.
B-U-L-K. Bulk. It makes it so bulky, and you got these big bumps that you have to overcome, and so does your long arm person, or if you're the long arm person, those bumps can really cause problems.
Yeah,
and
at a seam is what she's talking about. So where the seams intersect, you've got a lot of fabric coming together. You've got two layers of fabric on the side where you've pressed to the side, and then two on the other side, and then if you Betsy, if you've got like 60-degree angles or anything like that, or even half square triangles coming together, at a 45-degree angle,
all in that center.
All in that center. That is a lot of bulk.
It is, and so sometimes your block will like bubble up.
Yeah.
Or bubble in because of all that bulk. It doesn't know where to go, and it shifts the weight of the fabric. And so that is definitely a con for pressing.
And you
to
mentioned
one side.
long arming before. Sometimes we hope that it'll quilt out. but some things can't quilt out.
Right.
A certain amount of ease will happen, under the long arm, but some will not.
You mentioned shadowing.
Yes.
Tell them about that.
Shadowing is where you have a darker fabric pressed to the side underneath a lighter fabric. Now, we've all heard pressed to the dark, because we've all watched Star Wars. So, we heard the dark, you could come to the dark.
Yeah.
But the problem is sometimes you can't do that. Sometimes it's just a slightly lighter, a slightly darker fabric behind a white, say.
Well, if you're trying to lock seams, you have to press one way and one the other.
Yeah.
And so you
you're
could
gonna
be
run into
pressing
that.
to the light.
And so we've all had the dreaded shadow.
Right.
If we've ever pressed to the side. And there's not a lot you can do except maybe twist your seams back the other way. And then that causes a weird twist, which also kind of looks like puckering
And
on
adds
the
bulk.
front. And adds bulk.
Even more bulk.
Yeah. So if you're going to press to the side, you have to be very careful about trying to always press to the dark. But that requires you to do an awful lot of mental thinking ahead of time, so that
you have
can
to
go,
think forward.
Where's the dark?
Where's
the dark? Where's the dark? And this one, it's not so bad because, as you can see, where the blocks nest together. B-U-T-T, silly girl. Anyway, where they. We're gonna excuse Dawn for a few minutes.
I might have to leave the room
in a bit. I'm gonna get my ruler out. But you'll notice that on the adjoining blocks, there's a dark square and a light square. So as long as you're taking account of that as you're pressing those particular blocks in opposite directions, then you won't have that problem. You won't have that issue of the shadowing.
Right.
But
so needless to say,
happen.
Needless to say, neither one of us press to one side anymore. And the reason being is because I work small. I work with very tiny pieces. And sometimes my seam allowance is only 1/8 of an inch. That's how small I work. And when you are working small, the bulk doubles.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're small and now your bulk is half your block.
Yeah.
So I started pressing open, and I started reading about pressing to one side or pressing open, what the pros and cons were. And I found out that the reason a lot of people don't press open is because of an old wives' tale or an old myth.
They think
that it weakens the seam.
Weakened.
Yeah, it weakens the seam.
And that ain't true.
Well, it was true when everybody was hand piecing. And if you hand piece, you are actually only doing a half a stitch, because if you look on the top, you'll see a stitch, no stitch, a stitch, no stitch, and then underneath you'll see no stitch, a stitch, no stitch, a stitch. So you're actually only doing half a stitch when you're hand piecing up two pieces together. And so I would say if you're doing that, definitely you want to press to one side, because that's going to strengthen your quilt.
Yes. So if you're hand piecing, ignore the whole advice about pressing your seams open.
Right. Because with a sewing machine, you can look at the seam and it's stitch, 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 stitch. And on the bottom, it's stitch, 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 stitch. That is so hard to say. I'm so proud of myself.
We're going to get beat again.
I said stitch. Okay. So anyway, by pressing open, it doesn't weaken the seam because the seam is continuous.
Yeah.
So that's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah. If you're working with a machine,
right,
stitching, which is frankly the only way my hand stitching is.
Yeah, I don't do hand stitching.
And I applaud anybody who
does.
My
mom was a hand stitcher.
Gorgeous.
My mom never even used a rotary cutter. Wow. She would cut everything. I mean, I still have her little cardboard templates that she would draw and then, put the 1/4 inch on and then cut. It was amazing to me that she got any done, but she did. She produced about 6 or 7 quilts a year, hand piecing each piece. Amazing.
It is. I truly enjoy. How
many quilts do you think you do in a year?
Gosh, when I was an ambassador, I did at least 16. Now, probably a little bit less than that, more like 12.
Yeah, I probably do 30. Yeah.
Of course, they're this big. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, some of them are. That's true. That's true.
Well, but as if that makes the any less difficult to make, because you should see her miniature masterpieces.
It's fun.
But we
so anyway, we like to press open.
Like, what the hell?
And the reason being is because they don't lock. But you can see where your seams are.
Yeah.
So when you bring your seams together, and we're both pinners.
Yes.
I like to pin.
Absolutely.
And because we're both perfectionists, we like our quilts to be very accurate. Mm-hmm. And so we're pinners. And so I can look at one block, and when I'm putting up against the other block, I can see.
You can see when you're pinning. You can see that intersection, and you can make it come together perfect.
Yeah.
You just have to pin.
Yeah.
But we were talking about the stitching, and as far as it being a less strong seam, that's just bunk.
Yes, because of the continuous stitch.
Yeah,
the way the sewing machine stitches the two pieces together.
Yeah. So pressing open does not.
So if you're sewing on a
sewing
machine, you don't have to worry about a weak seam.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will say that I do shorten my stitch length a little bit, but
I do too.
The default on my machine is ridiculously large, I think.
You can, if your machine has memory, you can reset that.
I have.
Yeah,
I know.
Me too.
Kathy at Always in Stitches. Hi, Kathy. She showed me how to do that when I bought my machine.
Definitely.
And definitely something that I do.
So now when it turns on, it comes up to a lower than the standard 2.5.
Yeah, it comes up and it does ask me, hey, do you want to continue sewing this way? And I always say yes. Because
mine just automatically comes up to that.
Yeah. So I like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the benefit of pressing your seams open is that you will not have that bulk at the intersections at all.
And it lays so much flatter.
Oh my gosh, it's just amazing.
It is amazing. Try it. You may go back to pressing to one side. You know, it's a personal preference, like anything with quilting is a personal preference. Just because we're both here saying, oh, press open, press open, press open. I don't think you have to if you don't want to.
No, it is. Quilting is definitely a journey.
It is a journey, and it's a personal journey.
Like I said, I started out and I was always pressing to the side because that was kind of what I was taught and what everybody said out there. And then when I looked into pressing open, they all said, you know, weaken your seam and things will happen and blah, 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 and you just don't want to mess with it. So I just never did. But then I started working with this gal, and she started talking about it, and she slowly but surely would mention the benefits, and I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll give that a try. And oh my goodness, it's like life changing.
Yeah, try it if you've not done it before.
It really
and we're going to show you a couple little gadgets that'll help you with that.
Yeah, we'll talk about tools a little bit later.
Yeah,
but that's definitely we like to press open.
Let's talk about our pressing areas.
Okay.
So what does your ironing surface look like? Is it a standard ironing board or?
I am struggling with that. I desire a very large quilting surface, and I would like to build one that fits on top of my table, because I have this table that I use for demonstrations.
Okay, first of all, we're both very blessed that we have a room dedicated to our sewing.
Yes.
And I think sometimes I do forget this, that not everybody is as blessed as I am.
No.
And that some people are doing everything on their kitchen table or dining room table, and then they have to clean it off for when supper's time comes. And so it's not as a fluid thing as what we have. We're going to tell you about what we have and just really understand that we understand not everybody has the capability of doing it like we do.
Yeah.
Okay, but
true.
our life is about quilting. Our income is about quilting. So we've invested in that. We've invested in that. So don't think that we're thinking we don't know what the normal or average quilter has or doesn't have. We're just telling you what we have.
And
I'm sorry I interrupted.
That is okay.
Go back to your surface.
But upstairs in the surface, upstairs in my sewing room, I have a I've got kind of they talk about in the kitchen, you want a circle of, you've got your stove and then you've got your sink and then you've got your dishwasher kind of in a circle of convenience or whatever. And so in my sewing room, that's what I have. I've got my machine, and then back behind me, I've got a cutting area and a pressing area. Neither one is as big as I would like. The cutting area fits your standard, what is it, 24 by 18 inch cutting mat. And so that's my pressing surface is the other half of that area. And then and that's great for pressing blocks because it will fit, my pressing surface and all that. But when I need to press like fabric, need to press the quilt as it's getting built, I just bring out my ironing board and I just set it up. And it's just a standard ironing board. And I wish I had a wider one because they sell them at the shop, and I should have snapped that up when they had them because that's probably, I suspect, something you have. But that's my dream, is to have a better, bigger pressing surface, but I've made do with what I have.
That's what we all have to do. I
just use a standard ironing board, and then I try to find the biggest table that I've got. I've got a lot of folding tables, and you just make sure you've got something that you can iron on.
Okay, what about the surface? Is it a squishy surface or is it a solid surface?
It's a solid surface, and I use a wool pressing mat.
Okay.
So it is just a wood table with a solid surface. And before that, I had a mini ironing board that I would put on top of this wood table, and that would be my ironing.
But
your
ironing board, what kind of a surface is it?
It was.
It's a solid surface too. You don't have a bunch of batting.
No, it has an ironing cover. But it's just a cheapo board that I bought like at Target, so it does not have a lot of fluff or anything like that.
Good.
It's hard.
Yeah.
But anyway, it doesn't matter what the base surface is. I'm putting a wool pressing mat down and I'm pressing on that.
Okay.
And then when I move to my ironing board, I will move my pressing mat, my wool pressing mat, underneath what I'm pressing, so that I'm pressing using that wool.
Okay, so the point that I'm trying to make is that you want a surface that is not squishy. You want something that's a little more solid.
Right, yeah.
Because I can remember my mom...
Because if it's going to be really soft, you're trying to press. You're pressing.
You need something hard to press under and hard to press on so that you're actually pressing. Mm-hmm. Exactly. So I like a firmer pressing surface.
But tell me about your ironing.
Okay.
Area.
Well,
I take a sip of coffee.
Okay. My sewing area is, I am super blessed because my dad built me a sewing studio onto the house that is it's just wonderful. And so my sewing machine is set up like this, and then my cutting area is like this, and then behind my cutting area is a great big pressing surface. And it's huge.
Is it a table?
No, it's actually those IKEA cube things.
Oh yes.
And then on top is my wool mat. So
that's funny. That's what I'm using upstairs.
Yeah, it's huge.
When I said table, it's actually an IKEA. Oh, it's something that begins Colix.
I don't know.
Similar to what's back here, except taller and more cubes. But this something. Or no, I guess this is an actual bookshelf, but it's a something from IKEA that has those little cute cubby holes in it. And it's not very deep.
Mine's really deep.
Oh, see,
mine's
that's what I
really
wish.
Deep and really long.
Yeah, I wish I had a
longer than a
one.
standard ironing board and deeper. But again, I'm super blessed. Okay, and I've been doing it a long time. I've been, this is how I make my living, and I've been doing it a long time. So, anyway, but I have more than one pressing station.
So do I.
So do you. But mine is over with my sewing machine.
Oh.
So when I'm sewing, if this is my sewing table, my pressing station is right here. Okay? It's a little table. It's not very big because I have a little miniature iron. It's so cute. I wish it was green, but it's turquoise, I think. But it's very cute. It's an Oliso. And it's very nice. I don't use any steam. Do you steam?
No.
Okay.
And that's
not when I'm pressing.
I don't know when I stopped doing the steam thing, but and it's fine if you do.
Fine.
However, what I found is, number one, it
Shrinks.
keeping water in your iron just kind of destroys it over time. I don't care if it's distilled or not; it just kind of does.
Definitely.
And it's like rusting it from the inside. And then also the steam makes it easier for you to distort your fabric as you're pressing. So what I do is, when I have a stubborn wrinkle or whatever, I've got bottles of water that I spray, and then I press. So I'm not just, ironing and distorting and stretching the fabric.
So again, I piece small. I mean, when I'm doing my moda quilts, I'm piecing big. But I have this little station right beside me. So I'm not getting up and down while I'm making my units. The only time I'm up and down is when I'm putting the units together and it's building the big quilt. Okay. So, I have, over on my pressing station by my sewing machine, I have, again, a wool mat. And what actually is a wool mat? This is kind of a new thing. Wool mats haven't been out for very long. No. Less than 10 years, I would say.
Right. And they are expensive.
They are a little
So
chunky.
don't get the wool guilt.
Ask Santa to bring it to you.
Yeah. But anyway, so it looks something like this. This is, I've got several. This is one of them. They come in different sizes. I would say buy the largest you can afford.
Yes. Definitely.
And you will bless yourself with that.
Now
and
let's show the thickness. See how thick it is? I would say that's about 3/4 of an inch thick.
Yeah. And it's like felted wool that's been pressed into a solid thing of wool.
Now the great thing about wool is it holds heat. Okay? So when I'm pressing, my iron is hot. When I lay it down, my block down, and I press the seam open, now I have heat coming from the wool mat because it is absorbing the heat from the iron, going into the mat, and then it's bringing it back up and meeting the heat of the iron. So it's heating from the top and the bottom.
So I call it cooking it from both sides.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it's...
And that really
flattens the seam. Flattens the seam.
And fabric has a memory.
Yes, it does.
So it will remember how you've pressed it when you've pressed it with heat.
Exactly. So for me, the wool pressing mat is a must. The other thing when I'm pressing open that I love is a thing called a tailor's clapper. Now this is not your 1918 tailor's clapper. This is the new generation of tailor's clappers. And clappers are meant to help you open seams. The tailor, the person making the suits and the clothes, would use it mostly to open seams around shoulders, and they would use a tailor ham.
Yeah.
And then the only thing
looks like
looks like a ham.
Shape, which is the shape of like if you ever had shoulder pads, it was the shape of that.
Yeah, kind of like that. And so they would mold their seam on that, and then what they would do to set the seam is they would take a wooden block that they called a clapper, and they would lay it on the seam. And then
what does that do? Why a wood block? Why would I want to do that?
Wood absorbs heat, so it kind of like sucks the heat out and presses it. I mean, it really works. It's amazing how much different my seams have been since I've used my tailor clapper.
And there's a little bit of weight there too. So it's helping to keep the seam how you pressed it, and then helping to cool the seam as well.
Right.
So that, because you don't want, after you press something, you want to let it cool.
Right.
You don't want to
pick it up and move it right away.
Because heat relaxes fibers and allows them to go where you want them to go. And if you start moving it while it's hot, then you're allowing those fibers to go back to where they were, or you're possibly stretching it.
You're confusing them.
They get confused easily.
Yeah. But this is the modern clapper, because it combines the ham with the wood. And when I say the ham, I mean the curve. This ham was curved. Okay, so when I lay a seam, you don't probably have anything that you have a seam or anything that you've... Look at this. You guys can see this, right? Yeah, let's move these away.
I brought this as a show and tell, but we'll just use it as a demo as well, because I've just been pressing it.
Okay.
And I don't know. We'll get some photos later to make.
Okay,
this.
yeah, she'll get some close-ups, okay? But what I'm doing here is because that I am laying this seam on the top of my
on the round part.
The
clapper.
top of my clapper, it makes these seams fall away.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not disturbing these seams, okay?
Yeah.
This is when you get your iron and you're pressing, and then this one wants to come up because it's laying flat, and you're pressing, and your iron catches it and it rolls. Well, when you're using the clapper that has the wool, again, the wool is working with you with the heat. It is making these seams fall to the side. So the only seam that your iron is touching is this top seam. You see that? And so by pressing this seam open and then pulling out my clapper and laying it down on there, then that allows it to start cooling,
Mm-hmm.
and that seam is set. It's no longer confused by picking it up and moving it around. I'm going to let it sit there for a minute. Now, I've been known to use 2 or 3 clappers.
Yeah, I have multiple ones.
Yeah,
She brought a small one and a large one from the shop, and I have the same kind of thing.
Yeah. This is the one I use at my sewing machine, and then I have a bigger one that I use over at my pressing station.
Yeah, because when I'm pressing like
a long seam,
when you're pressing like rows or a long seam,
right? You need something
you'll
longer.
want something longer.
A little
and
bit longer.
I will say that I'll link to these in the video, but they're kind of a little hard to find. Clappers. The quilting world has found them, so obviously you can find them probably at your local shop. But the ones that, I don't know if you know, but the ones that have the rounded with the wool on top, there's not many sources of that particular variation. And
Correct.
I have to say it's worth finding them because they're great.
Correct.
With the wool on top. But if you can't, then at least get, the clapping action will help.
Right,
And
right.
you can just press with your wool mat but having the wool on top really helps.
But even if you're pressing to one side, you wouldn't use this part because that doesn't work, okay? But you could use the wood part. A wood cutting board would even help you if you're pressing to one side because it's going to absorb the heat and set that seam. So I find that I'm addicted. I just cannot use. I can't make a block without my clapper. So,
I just can't.
Yeah. So I think the wool mats and the wool clappers have really changed the way my pressing regiment goes from now on.
Oh my goodness. We had a lot to talk about with pressing, so we decided to make it into 2 parts. So welcome back to part 2.
Part 2.
Right, Don?
Part 2 of Pressing Matters.
Because it really, really does matter. I guess that just tells you how much we had to cover about pressing. So we'll just begin with the next topic.
Yeah. Ironing is a no-no, and pressing is the way to go.
Right. Yeah.
Ooh, was that kind of poetic? That was kind of poetic, wasn't it?
Maybe we could cross that into a pillow.
Okay. Let's say it again. Ironing is no. Pressing is a go.
It's a go.
Except for ironing. For ironing is we're saying pressing.
You were doing it, so I did it too. Oh my God. Okay. Again.
Ironing is no. Pressing is a go. I made this project bag, and after I got it done, it was all this pink was across the front, and I liked this fabric.
I do too. The nose of your iron is a very important thing to use to help press open. So we'll show you in a little bit of video how to use the nose of your iron to kind of nose the seam open.
Right. Don't get us started on something that really, really matters. Pressing matters. Just kidding.
As we'll demonstrate with our with the next important thing you need to know about pressing. So we'll see you later. In the
Bye.
Bye.
Or welcome back, or whatever, wherever we're at in the process. Bye.
I was trying to do an exit.
Oh, you were? Okay, we're doing an exit. Bye.